My name is Jesse Stone. I'm 34 years old, a cybersecurity specialist living in the suburbs of San Jose, California, where oak-lined streets and tiled roof houses sit quietly under a deep blue sky. From the outside, my life seems ordinary. A loving wife, Olivia, a young daughter named Grace, and a job that keeps me busy with lines of code and invisible threats in the digital world. But this morning, as I stepped out of the house, the crisp autumn air seemed to carry an ominous warning. I didn't know that in just a few minutes everything I believed about my family would be shaken to its core. I stood at the front door holding a cold cup of coffee, my eyes absently scanning the clear sky. Today was a significant day, the meeting to announce my grandfather Reginald Stone's will. My grandfather was a remarkable man, a real estate tycoon with an iron hand and a heart of gold. He built an empire in this region, transforming empty plots into luxurious neighborhoods. But to me, he was more than a wealthy man. He was the only person in my family who looked at me with fairness and trust. When I was a child, I'd sit by his side listening to his stories about overcoming hardships, about the value of honesty and patience. "Jesse," he used to say, "the true worth of a family isn't in money but in how we treat each other." But since his passing 2 months ago, everything in my family has descended into chaos. The air is always tense like a taut string, with endless arguments about the inheritance. My father, Gregory, speaks of my grandfather's will with a calculating tone. My mother, Patricia, tries to mediate but can't hide the worry in her eyes. My younger brother, Jason, seems only interested in securing as much as he can. I, on the other hand, couldn't care less about the estate. I just want this to be over so I can find peace with my wife and daughter. But my family keeps dragging me into meetings and disputes, and I'm so exhausted I just want to escape. I sighed, set the coffee cup on the porch step, and walked toward the silver sedan parked in front of the house. Today I had to drive to the lawyer's office downtown for the will reading. I wasn't excited, but I knew I had to go. For my grandfather, and because a part of me still hoped my family could find harmony again. I opened the car door, slid into the driver's seat, and had just touched the key when a loud bang rang out against the window. Startled, I turned, my heart pounding. It was Sam, the homeless man who lived at the corner of my street. His tattered clothes hung loosely on his frail frame, his white hair a tangled mess, but his eyes gleamed with an urgency that sent a chill down my spine. Sam wasn't a stranger. I often stopped to chat with him, giving him a few bucks or a sandwich when I passed by. He always called me by name, flashing a toothless smile and sharing fragmented stories of his youth. But this morning he wasn't smiling. He banged on the window again, harder, his hoarse voice almost a shout. "Jesse, don't drive that car." I froze, my hand still gripping the key. "Sam, what's wrong?" I opened the door and stepped out, a sense of unease rising in my chest. The old man was panting, his trembling hands pointing toward the undercarriage of the car. Last night I saw someone crawling under your car. I don't know who it was, but I know something's wrong. Don't drive it, Jesse. Listen to me." His words hit me like a punch to the face. My heart raced, blood rushing to my head. Someone under my car? Who? Why? I looked at Sam, searching for a sign that he was joking, but his eyes were filled with worry, not a trace of deceit. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "Are you sure? What did you see?" He nodded frantically. "I couldn't sleep, sat at the corner all night. Around midnight, I saw a shadow sneaking around. They were dressed in dark clothes, hood up, face covered. They knelt under your car, did something for a while, then left. I didn't dare get closer, but I know it wasn't right." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Half believing, half doubting, I knelt down and peered under the car. The faint morning light illuminated the ground, and I froze. A glistening pool of oil spread beneath the car, shimmering like black blood. I reached out, my fingers touching a slick, viscous liquid. I leaned closer, my heart pounding, and then I saw it. The brake line severed with a clean, sharp cut, as if by a knife. If I'd started the car and driven onto the road, the brakes would have failed. An accident, or worse, death, was certain. I sank to the ground, my hands trembling. My mind reeled. Who did this? And why? I looked up at Sam, my voice breaking. You saved my life. If it weren't for you... The old man shook his head, his cloudy eyes softening with a hint of warmth. You've been good to me, Jesse. You gave me money, food, never looked at me like I was trash. Today I'm just returning the favor. I fumbled with my wallet, pulling out a $100 bill and pressing it into his hand. Take this, Sam. I don't know how to thank you enough. But he pushed my hand back, his voice rough but firm. No, Jesse. You've helped me more than enough. Let me feel like I've done something meaningful. I stood there watching Sam turn and shuffle away, his gaunt figure disappearing around the corner. But inside me a storm was brewing. Who had cut the brake line? Who wanted me dead? And why today of all days, the day of my grandfather's will reading? The questions sliced through my mind like sharp knives. I looked back at the car, the oil slick a deadly warning. Something was terribly wrong, and I knew that if I didn't act, I'd never uncover the truth. Anxiety and fear enveloped me, beads of sweat forming on my forehead despite the crisp autumn air. My heart pounded as if it might burst through my chest. I placed a hand on the hood of the car, trying to steady myself, but my mind was spiraling. I thought of my father, Gregory, with his cold tone whenever he spoke of the inheritance. He always looked at me as if I were a threat, as if my existence stood in the way of his share. I thought of my mother, Patricia, who played the peacemaker but sometimes let slip glances heavy with unspoken knowledge, as if she knew something she'd never voice. And Jason, my younger brother, always living in my shadow, resentful of the favor our grandfather showed me. But could they go this far? Could they want me dead? I shook my head, trying to dispel the dark thoughts, but the oil slick under the car was real. The clean, sharp cut on the brake line was real. This wasn't a random accident. This was a conspiracy, and I was standing on the edge of life and death. My first instinct was to call 911 to report it to the police and let them investigate. I even pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen, ready to dial. But then I stopped, my hand clenching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I'm a cybersecurity specialist. I've faced invisible attackers, hackers hiding behind screens, erasing their tracks in seconds. I know how they think, how they cover their crimes. If I called the police now, the person behind this would know I'd caught on. They'd vanish, leaving no evidence. I'd be left with nothing but a story of a near accident and no proof. No, I couldn't let them slip away so easily. I needed a bigger plan, a trap clever enough to make the culprit reveal themselves. I paced in front of the car, trying to organize my thoughts. The morning sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow on the ground. But I had no mind to notice their beauty. In my head, a reckless idea began to take shape. Crazy, dangerous, but perhaps the only way. If I wanted to expose this plot, I had to make my family, or whoever was behind this, believe their plan had succeeded. I had to let them think I was dead, or at the very least clinging to life. A car accident. A staged scene. The press, the police, and my family would all believe I was gravely injured, perhaps even clinically dead. Only when their guard was down would I have a chance to see their true faces. My heart beat faster, not from fear but from a strange thrill. The idea was bold, too risky, but it made me feel like I was taking control. I couldn't just stand here waiting for the enemy to strike again. I had to act, to outsmart them with my own cunning. I pulled out my phone and dialed Joseph Grant, my closest friend, a doctor at the city hospital. Joseph owed my grandfather a debt. Years ago, when his family was struggling, my grandfather paid for his medical school tuition, asking for nothing in return. Reginald Stone gave me the chance to become a doctor, Joseph once told me, his voice full of gratitude. If anyone in the world would help me with a plan this insane, it was him. The phone rang twice before Joseph picked up. Jesse, what's going on? You're calling early. His voice was calm and steady as always, but I couldn't keep my own composure. Joseph, I need your help. Something big's happened. I quickly recounted Sam's warning, the oil slick, the severed brake line. My voice trembled, not from fear, but from the anger burning inside me. Someone wants me dead, Joseph. And I think it might be someone in my family. There was silence on the other end, long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then he sighed, his voice heavy with concern. Jesse, I know things with your family haven't been right, especially since your grandfather passed. If this is your parents' doing, you need to call the police now. No, I cut him off, my voice harder than I expected. If I call the police, whoever did this will know I'm onto them. They'll erase their tracks and I'll have nothing. I need you to help me do something bolder. Bolder? How bold? Joseph asked, his tone wary. I took a deep breath, knowing my next words would change everything. I want to stage a car accident. I want everyone, the police, the press, my family, to think I'm gravely injured, maybe even clinically dead. Only when they think I'm gone can I find out who's behind this. Another silence. I could picture Joseph shaking his head, his thick brows furrowed. Jesse, you're insane. This isn't a game. If this gets exposed, you'll be in serious trouble. And Olivia? Grace? Are you going to hide this from them too? Hearing my wife and daughter's names made my heart clench. I didn't want to drag Olivia and Grace into this. I didn't want them to endure the pain of a lie. But if I did nothing, if I let the culprit strike again, I might never come back to them. I know, I said, my voice softening. I know it's risky, but I don't have a choice, Joseph. If I don't do this, I'll always live in fear that next time they'll succeed. Joseph sighed again, and I knew he was wrestling with himself. Finally, he spoke, his voice reluctant but resolute. All right, Jesse, I'll help you. But you have to promise me one thing, be careful. I don't want to lose my friend. Thank you, I whispered, a mix of relief and tension washing over me. I hung up, but before leaving, I knew I needed one more person, someone who could watch my family without being detected. In my cybersecurity work, I'd collaborated with a private detective agency in San Jose, led by Walter Briggs, a middle-aged man with eyes sharp as knives and a knack for uncovering truths from the darkest corners. I dialed Walter, and he answered on the first ring. Jesse Stone. Walter's voice was low and gravelly, like he'd just taken a sip of whiskey. Haven't heard from you in a while. What's up? I didn't beat around the bush. Walter, I need your help. Someone tried to kill me. I don't know who, but I suspect my family's involved. I need you to watch them. My parents, my brother. Track their every move, every suspicious transaction. Can you do it? Walter let out a laugh, but it wasn't a cheerful one. You serious? All right, fine. The client's always right. You know my rates. Send me the details and I'll start immediately. Thank you, I said, then hung up. I looked at the car one last time, the oil slick gleaming like a deadly reminder that I was playing a dangerous game. A chilling thought ran down my spine. To uncover the truth, I had to die once, at least in the eyes of my family. I walked back into the house, preparing to say goodbye to Olivia and Grace, my heart heavy as lead. But I knew this was the only way to protect them, and to unmask the person who wanted to take my life. In the kitchen, Olivia was slicing bread, her brown hair tied up high, her eyes gentle but filled with worry as she looked at me. Are you okay, Jesse? You look so stressed. Her voice was soft, but I could hear the deep concern in it. Grace, my little daughter, was scribbling at the table, her bright eyes looking up at me. Daddy, where are you going? Can you play with me? Her innocent voice cut into my heart like a knife. I wanted to scoop them both up, to tell them I'd never leave, that I'd stay with them forever. But I couldn't. Not now. I knelt down, kissed Grace's forehead, and forced a smile. Daddy has to go to a meeting for a bit, sweetheart. But I'll be back soon, okay? Grace nodded, but her guileless eyes nearly brought me to tears. I stood, pulled Olivia into a tight hug. I'll be fine, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if that was true. Olivia squeezed my hand, as if sensing something was off, but she didn't ask more. I left the house, my heart aching, knowing the hours ahead would change everything. I took a taxi to a small room in the hospital where Joseph had arranged for us to meet privately. The laptop screen in front of me lit up with the face of Walter Briggs, the private detective I'd contacted. Walter's voice was low and sharp, as if he was born to handle cases like this. "All right, Jesse. You want to stage an accident? Lay it out. What's the plan?" Joseph, sitting beside me, frowned. "I still think this is too risky. If this gets exposed, Jesse, you'll be in serious legal trouble. And your family?" "My family is the problem," I interrupted, my voice harder than I intended. "Someone cut my brake line. Someone wants me dead. I can't just sit here waiting for the next attack." I looked at the screen where Walter was nodding. "Walter, you can track my parents and brother. Record everything they do after the accident is announced. I need evidence. Joseph, I need you to help make this accident look as real as possible." Joseph sighed, but his eyes told me he'd relented. "Fine. I'll contact a trusted ambulance team. They'll know what to do, but you have to be careful." Walter cut in, his voice dry. "As for me, I'll have people watching your family. Every call, every meeting, every transaction, I'll document it all." I nodded, feeling an invisible cord tightening around my chest. "Thank you both. And about the car, I'll call a mechanic to fix the brakes first. We need it functional so I can drive to the location." We continued hashing out the plan over the video call, every detail meticulously calculated. I'd have the brakes repaired to ensure safety, then choose a quiet road on the outskirts of San Jose, a secluded stretch where I could stage the accident without endangering anyone. Joseph would prepare lab blood and medical chemicals to create fake injuries, making me look like I'd been through a horrific crash. Walter would station someone nearby to record the scene, ensuring no mistakes. The goal was to make my family, and whoever was behind this, believe I'd been in a serious accident, possibly fatal. When the call ended, I looked out the hospital window where the sunset was slowly descending. I felt like I was stepping into a chess game where every move could be my last. But I had no other choice. After calling a mechanic to fix the brake system, I drove my car to a deserted road on the outskirts. The trees on either side stood silent, like mute witnesses to my plan. I chose a curve near a large oak tree, a spot with little traffic but close enough to a main road for the ambulance to arrive quickly. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the strange sensation of knowing I was about to die, even if just for show. I stopped the car, took a deep breath, and stepped out. I placed a brick on the gas pedal, double-checking to ensure the car would crash straight into the tree without harming anyone. I stood there, staring at the familiar sedan, the car that nearly became my coffin, and a chill ran down my spine. I counted down in my head, 3, 2, 1. Then I released the brake. The engine roared, the tires spun, and the car slammed into the tree. The impact echoed like an explosion in the quiet air. The front crumpled, airbags deployed, and white smoke rose from the hood. I stood there, heart racing, but a part of me felt alive. Minutes later, the wail of an ambulance sounded in the distance. Joseph had done his part well. The paramedic team arrived, swift and professional. I lay on the ground, pretending to be unconscious, while a medic, one briefed by Joseph, smeared fake blood on my face and chest. Medical chemicals reddened my skin, mimicking severe injuries. "Victim unconscious, weak pulse, possible clinical death," one paramedic shouted, his voice dramatic as per the script. I heard it all, keeping my eyes closed, my breathing steady. They loaded me onto a stretcher, into the ambulance, and I knew the performance had officially begun. At the hospital, I was taken to a secure room in the technical wing, where Joseph had set up access to security cameras. The screen in front of me showed the hospital hallway where my parents and brother would soon appear. Joseph entered, his face tense but focused. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing at the monitor. "Fine," I replied, my voice hoarse. "Thank you, Joseph. I know this isn't easy." He shook his head, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're my friend, but I'm still worried. If they find out..." "They won't," I said, though I wasn't certain. I stared at the screen, waiting. And then they arrived. My father, Gregory, walked in first, his black suit impeccable but his face pale. My mother, Patricia, followed, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. But something in the way she clutched my father's hand made me uneasy. Jason, my brother, came last, head bowed, but I noticed how his eyes darted around as if searching for something. They sat in the hallway chairs and I zoomed in on the screen. On the surface, they looked worried, like any family hearing a loved one was in an accident. But then, as the medic walked away, my father leaned close to my mother, whispering something. I couldn't hear it, but his eyes, cold, calculating, made my heart clench. Jason leaned in, saying something brief, and the three exchanged looks I couldn't interpret as anything but scheming. The doubt in me hardened into certainty. They were hiding something, and I was going to find out what. Joseph stepped into the hallway, approaching my parents and Jason where they sat waiting. He played the role of a stern doctor. "The patient's condition is critical," he said, his voice firm. "No visitors. We need absolute quiet." My father pleaded to see me, his voice trembling, but I knew he was acting. My mother wiped tears, but I saw her hands shake, not from grief. Jason stood silently, but his eyes were sharp as knives. From the secure room in the hospital's technical wing, I watched them through the security camera feed, my heart tightening. Every glance, every gesture they made felt like pieces of a puzzle confirming the screaming suspicion inside me. They weren't here out of concern for me. They were here to ensure I wouldn't wake up. My father stood holding my mother's hand as if to comfort her, but the way he whispered in her ear, his eyes scanning the room to check for eavesdroppers, sent a chill down my spine. My mother nodded slightly, wiping her eyes with an expensive handkerchief, but her eyes weren't red like someone who'd been crying. Jason, my brother, sat motionless in his chair, hands clasped tightly, but I caught the faint smirk on his lips, a subtle smile as if he was suppressing satisfaction. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms until they stung. They were discussing something, I was certain. And deep down, I knew it had to do with my grandfather's will, with the fortune they coveted. I sat in front of the monitor, the pale blue light from the camera illuminating my face, but inside me a storm raged. I thought I knew my family, but now every second watching them through the screen was a knife slicing into my already fragile trust. I wanted to scream, to rush out and confront them, to demand why. Why would they betray me like this? But I couldn't. Not now. My plan was in motion and I had to stay strong even though my heart was bleeding. Then the hallway door swung open and I froze. Olivia walked in, holding Grace, our little daughter, by the hand. Olivia looked like she'd run a marathon, her hair disheveled, her eyes red, and her hands trembling as she clutched Grace tightly. Grace looked confused, her wide eyes scanning the room, trying to understand what was happening. My heart shattered when I heard her ask, her voice quivering, "Mommy, is Daddy not coming back?" Olivia hugged her tightly, collapsing into a chair, sobbing. "No, sweetheart, Daddy's going to be okay. He's strong. He'll come back to us." I sat there in the hidden room, separated by just a few walls, but it felt like an ocean between us. I wanted to run to them, to hold them, to tell them I was still here, still alive. But I couldn't. Not because of the plan, but because I knew if I stopped now, the person who wanted me dead wouldn't stop. And next time, it might not just be me. It could be Olivia and Grace. I clenched my fists tighter, my nails digging deeper into my skin, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. Am I being too cruel? I asked myself, the voice in my head sounding like an accusation. I had pulled the whole world into this act. The press, the police, my family, and now my wife and daughter. Olivia didn't deserve this pain. Grace didn't deserve to cry, thinking her father was gone. But if I didn't see this through, if I didn't go all the way, I'd never know the truth, and I'd never be able to protect them. Joseph entered the monitoring room, closing the door softly. He looked at me, his eyes full of worry. "Jesse, you okay?" I just saw Olivia and Grace out there. I don't know how long you can keep this from them. I turned away, not wanting him to see my eyes welling up. I don't want this, Joseph, but I have to do it. If I don't find out who's behind this, they won't stop. Next time, it might not just be me. Joseph placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low but steady. I understand. If you want to protect them in the long run, you have to keep going. I'll go out there, try to comfort Olivia and Grace. I'll tell them you still have a chance, that we're doing everything we can. I nodded, unable to speak. Joseph left and I glued my eyes back to the screen. Olivia was holding Grace, whispering something to comfort her. My parents and Jason stood nearby, but they didn't approach. My father muttered something to my mother and Jason cut in, his voice low but tense. I couldn't hear what they said, but the way they leaned close, the way their eyes flicked past Olivia and Grace without a hint of emotion, chilled me. They didn't care. They weren't grieving. They were waiting for me to die so they could move on. By the afternoon, my parents and Jason left the hospital. They walked out, whispering to each other, oblivious to the fact that their every move was being recorded. Walter, the private detective, had people tailing them from the moment they left the hallway. I checked my phone for a message from Walter. A single line. The will reading was postponed due to news of the accident. Your family's on the move. I'll report soon. I set the phone down, a heavy weight settling in my chest. The plan was unfolding as I'd hoped, but why did I feel so empty? The image of Olivia crying, of Grace's confused questions about me, replayed in my mind. I wondered if I had the strength to keep going, to bear watching my wife and daughter suffer because of a lie. But then I remembered the oil slick under the car, the clean cut on the brake line. Someone wanted me dead, and I wasn't going to let them win. I turned back to the screen, the hallway now quieter. Joseph returned, his expression softer. I talked to Olivia, he said. She's stronger than you think. She believes you'll pull through. Grace does too. They're waiting for you. Thank you, I whispered, my voice hoarse. But deep down I knew I couldn't return to them yet, not until I uncovered the truth. I looked out the window where the sunset was fading and made a silent vow. I'll find you. And when I do, no one will save you from what you've done. I sat in the hospital's secluded room, the dim glow of the security camera monitor casting light on my face, but my mind was elsewhere. The image of Olivia crying, of Grace's confused questions about me, haunted me like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Yet alongside that pain, a fire of anger was rising, urging me to press on. My parents and Jason had left the hospital, but I knew they hadn't gone far. They were scheming, waiting, and I needed to know what they were doing. Walter Briggs, the private detective I'd hired, had already started his work. I could only hope he was quick enough to catch what my family was hiding. A few hours later, Walter sent his first message. They're on the move. Le Papillon restaurant, downtown San Jose. I'm here. Le Papillon. The name sent a shiver through me. It was where my family went when they wanted to discuss important matters, things they didn't want others to overhear. The upscale restaurant with soundproof walls, discreetly arranged tables, and waiters who knew to keep their distance was the perfect setting. If they chose Le Papillon, they were planning something big, and I had a gut feeling it was tied to my grandfather's will and the sabotage of my car's brakes this morning. I sat in front of the monitor, clutching my phone, waiting for Walter's updates. A part of me still hoped I was wrong, that my parents and Jason weren't behind the attempt on my life. But deep down, I knew I couldn't afford to be naive anymore. The cut on the brake line was real. The oil slick was real. And the calculating looks they exchanged in the hospital hallway were real. Walter sent another message. I'm in position. Table next to theirs. Mike is live. I pictured Walter playing the part of a busy businessman, sitting alone with a glass of wine, dressed in a sharp suit, his pen, a tiny recording device he was always proud of, tucked in his pocket. Walter was meticulous, every detail accounted for. If anyone could deliver evidence, it was him. Meanwhile, at Le Papillon, my parents and Jason sat around a table shielded by silk curtains. The light from crystal chandeliers highlighted their tense faces. My father, Gregory, sat upright, tapping his fingers on the table, his voice low and cold. My mother, Patricia, sat beside him, her eyes scanning the room as if checking for prying ears. Jason, as usual, seemed restless, his foot tapping under the table, his sharp eyes betraying a mix of anxiety and eagerness. When the waiter left after refilling their wine, my father lowered his voice, but Walter's mic caught every word. "If Jesse doesn't pull through," he said, his tone as calm as if discussing a business deal, "the estate will need to be adjusted soon. His share naturally will revert to us." My mother nodded, her whisper sharp and calculated. "We need to move quickly, Gregory, before the lawyer throws up any obstacles. Henry Wallace isn't someone to underestimate." Jason cut in, his voice urgent. "The guy did a clean job. Now we just wait for Jesse to be gone and we'll get his share. Grandpa always favored him. This is our chance to take back what should have been ours." I wasn't there, but when Walter sent me the audio file that night, each word they spoke was a dagger to my heart. I sat in the secluded room, earphones pressed tightly, replaying every sentence, every word. My father's cold voice, my mother's calculating tone, Jason's envious sneer. They blended into a chorus of betrayal. They didn't just want me gone. They were waiting for it, planning to seize the inheritance my grandfather left behind. Walter, sitting just meters from their table, maintained his calm facade. He sipped his wine, glanced at the newspaper on his table, but the pen in his pocket captured their entire conversation. Not a single word was missed. When my family stood to leave, Walter stayed behind, waiting until they were out of sight before sending me the audio file and a detailed report. That night, in a discreet motel room I'd rented to conceal my movements, I opened Walter's audio file. My parents' and Jason's voices came through clear enough to make me shudder. "If Jesse doesn't pull through, we need to move quickly. This is our chance to take back." Each word was a hammer blow to the last shred of faith I had in my family. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. I had suspected them, but hearing them speak those words, treating my death as an opportunity, tore my heart apart. But that pain quickly turned into a fire of resolve. They wanted me gone at any cost. They thought I was lying in the ICU dying and they were celebrating their victory. But they were wrong. I was still here, still alive, and I would make them pay. I texted Walter, "Thank you. Keep tracking them. I need more evidence." Then I messaged Joseph, "The plan continues. They're exposing themselves." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky over San Jose. The city lights twinkled, but in my heart there was only one thought. I wouldn't back down. Not now, when I'd come this far. I would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The phone buzzed again, its screen lighting up with a message from Walter. "Jason's on the move." He left the restaurant, heading south toward the abandoned industrial zone. "I'm tailing him." My heart pounded. The abandoned industrial zone, a place no one frequented unless they had something to hide. Jason, my younger brother, always appeared before others in a sharp suit, flashing the confident smile of a wealthy heir. But I knew he had dark corners, secrets I'd never managed to uncover. And now I might finally see his true face. Walter, with the finesse of a seasoned operative, followed Jason from a safe distance. Jason's black SUV glided through the brightly lit streets of downtown San Jose before slipping into darker, quieter roads where the city's glow gave way to shadows and silence. The abandoned industrial zone lay on the city's outskirts, a labyrinth of dilapidated warehouses, rusted walls, and empty parking lots. Once a bustling manufacturing hub, it was now a ghost of its past, a perfect setting for clandestine meetings. Walter parked a short distance away, posing as a lost driver checking a map on his phone, but his sharp eyes never left Jason's SUV. Jason pulled into an empty lot, stepped out, and scanned his surroundings with a wary expression. His usual polished demeanor looked out of place in the desolate setting. He stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes darting as if waiting for something, or someone. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. A bald man, his arms covered in tattoos, exuded a menacing aura like a character straight out of a crime movie. He wore a worn leather jacket, his eyes narrowed, and a sinister smirk played on his lips. From his vantage point, Walter adjusted the camera hidden in his coat, capturing every moment. The lens clearly caught the tattooed man's face, Jason's tense gaze, and the brief exchange of words. Too quiet for Walter's microphone to pick up, but the quick handshake and the way Jason slipped a thick envelope into the man's hand said everything. Walter stayed calm, snapping photos and documenting every detail. When the tattooed man turned and melted back into the darkness, Jason got into his SUV and sped off. Walter didn't follow immediately. He knew he needed to identify this man first. Using his network of contacts, Walter reached out to a source in the police department. Within a few hours, he had a preliminary file. The tattooed man was Vince Malone, a drug addict with a rap sheet a mile long, from theft to assault. He wasn't the mastermind, but he was clearly a pawn in someone's game. And I had a sinking feeling that someone was Jason. That night, in the discreet motel room I'd rented to stay off the radar, I received an email from Walter. Attached were the photos from the parking lot and Vince Malone's file. I opened each image, my heart racing as I saw Jason's face, his eyes tense but resolute as he handed the envelope to the tattooed man. Then I read Malone's file, each line hitting me like a hammer to the chest. A junkie, a criminal, and my brother, the boy who grew up with me, who used to play basketball with me in our backyard, was now doing business with him. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling, feeling like the world was crumbling around me. I remembered our childhood days when Jason and I ran through the fields behind our grandfather's house, laughing without a care. I remembered how he looked at me with admiration when I fixed his broken bicycle. But now, that look was gone, replaced by envy, greed, and hatred. I wondered, when did we become enemies? When did our family turn into a battlefield where even blood could betray for money? But I didn't have time to wallow in pain. I called Walter, my voice low but firm. "You did great work, Walter. Now we need to dig deeper on this tattooed guy. If he talks, we'll have solid evidence." Walter gave a dry laugh over the phone. "I know what you want, Jesse. But getting to a guy like Malone won't be easy. He's the type who's only loyal to cash. If you want him to talk, we'll need a trap and a lot of money." "I'll handle the money," I said, though I wasn't even sure how I'd manage it. "But you need to find a way to meet him. Promise him whatever it takes. I need to know who's behind this and exactly what they're planning." "All right," Walter replied. "I'll figure it out. But you need to be careful. If Jason's working with people like Malone, you're not just dealing with family. This is a dangerous game." I hung up and stared out the window where the city lights still twinkled in the night sky, but in my heart there was no room for fear, only a burning resolve pushing me forward. Jason had gone too far, and I would make him, and whoever was behind him, pay. I opened the photo of Jason and Malone again, my brother's cold, calculating eyes staring back at me. "You chose this path, Jason," I whispered to myself. "And now I'll show you that your big brother isn't as easy to outplay as you thought." A few days later, Walter sent me the address of a seedy bar on the outskirts of San Jose, a frequent haunt of the tattooed man, Vince Malone. It was a shadowy corner of the city where flickering neon signs cast dim light and the air reeked of cheap beer mixed with cigarette smoke. I wanted to confront Malone face to face, knowing full well how dangerous this meeting could be. But I had no other choice. If I wanted to unravel the entire plot, I needed Malone to talk. And I was prepared to do whatever it took to make that happen. That night, Walter and I sat in a rented car parked a few blocks from the bar. The air inside was heavy, broken only by the faint crackle of an old song playing on the radio. Walter, with his usual calm demeanor, checked his gear. A camera hidden in a shirt button, a tiny microphone clipped to his collar, and a pistol tucked under the seat. "Just in case," as he put it. I glanced at him, forcing a smile. "You sure you're okay with this, Walter?" He smirked, his eyes sharp as a blade. "I've dealt with worse scum than Malone, but you, Jesse, you need to stay cool. This guy can smell fear from a mile away. If you want him to talk, you've got to own the game." I nodded, though my heart was pounding. We stepped out of the car, blending into the darkness of the street. The bar was at the end of a narrow alley, its faint red glow spilling from grimy windows. I pushed the door open, the stench of smoke and liquor hitting me like a wave. Walter followed, playing the part of a casual friend, but his eyes never stopped scanning. Malone was in the corner alone, a half-empty beer and a smoldering cigarette in front of him. He matched his file perfectly, bald head gleaming under the dim light, arms covered in tattoos, and the eyes of a man always ready for trouble. As I approached, he looked up, and for a split second I caught a flicker of surprise on his face. Then he let out a mocking, raspy laugh. "So you're not dead yet? Give it time." I stood before him, forcing my voice to stay steady despite the rage boiling inside me. "I know you were paid to take me out, Malone, but I'm not here to fight. I want to make a deal." He raised an eyebrow, a glint of greed in his eyes. "A deal? Who do you think you are to talk deals with me?" I stepped closer, my voice low and icy. "I know you cut my brakes. I know you were paid. But if you cooperate, tell me everything. Who hired you, how much, the details. I'll pay you double. More importantly, I won't press charges. You walk away clean as long as you're on my side." Malone studied me, his eyes wavering between suspicion and temptation. He took a swig of his beer, then grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "You think you're clever, huh? Fine. I don't owe anyone loyalty as long as the money's good." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Your brother, Jason Stone. He found me in this bar, paid me $2,000 in cash up front. The job was to cut your brakes, make it look like an accident. He promised another $3,000 when you were gone." My heart clenched, but I kept my face stone cold. "Keep talking. How'd you do it?" He shrugged as if recounting a trivial story. "That night I slipped into your neighborhood. Easy job, no one notices a guy like me. I crawled under your car, cut the brake line, done in 5 minutes. Jason said he wanted you gone before the will was read. Said your grandfather favored you, and he wanted to take back what he thought was his." Each of Malone's words was a knife twisting in my chest. Jason, my brother, the boy who once shared dreams with me, laughed with me. Now he was ready to kill me for money. I wanted to scream, to slam my fist into Malone's face, but I held back. Walter, standing a few steps away, stayed silent, but I knew his camera and microphone were capturing every word. When Malone finished, I locked eyes with him. "Thanks for being honest, Malone. But there's one thing you should know. Everything you just said was recorded." His face froze, his smug expression morphing into panic. He shot to his feet, lunging toward me, but Walter was faster, stepping in front of me like a wall. "Easy, pal," Walter said, his voice low but menacing. "You don't want to make this worse." The distant wail of police sirens cut through the air, and Malone's panic deepened. He stumbled back, muttering curses, then bolted for the bar's back door, disappearing into the night. Walter looked at me and shrugged. "He won't get far. We've got what we need." That night, Walter and I walked into the police station carrying evidence that felt like lead. The audio from Le Papillon, photos of Jason's exchange with Malone, and the video of Malone's cold confession. The officer on duty, a middle-aged man with tired but sharp eyes, reviewed each piece, his brow furrowing. "This is serious, Mr. Stone," he said, his voice grave. "We'll open a criminal investigation immediately. But to secure a warrant, we'll need time to build a solid case." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, feeling like my blood was boiling. "Fine, but you need to move fast," I said, my voice firm. "I know my family will push to have my grandfather's will read soon. I'll expose everything then so they have no way to deny it. Can you coordinate? Show up right after with an arrest warrant?" The officer looked at me, a mix of surprise and respect in his eyes. He nodded slowly. "All right. If you're set on this, we'll get the file to the DA's office by morning. But you need to be sure, Stone. This isn't a game. I've never been more certain, I replied, my voice ringing like a vow. Inside, I felt a surge of strength, not from anger, but from resolve. Jason, my parents, they'd chosen to betray me, to make me a pawn in their greedy game. But now, I was in control. I would face them not as a son or brother, but as a storm ready to sweep away their lies. Walter and I left the station, stepping into the chilly San Jose streets. The night breeze carried the crispness of autumn, but I didn't feel cold. The starry sky seemed to witness my silent promise. I thought of Olivia and Grace, their tears in the hospital hallway, and my heart ached. But for them, I couldn't stop. I gripped the USB drive, holding the evidence, feeling it like a sword in my hand. The battle wasn't over, but this time I didn't just have the truth. I had justice. The days that followed were a blur as I lived like a shadow, moving between discreet motel rooms, dodging prying eyes. Walter kept tabs on my family, sending me concise but razor-sharp reports. As I'd predicted, my parents and Jason didn't have the patience to wait long. They were already making their next move, and their target was the office of Henry Wallace, the lawyer my grandfather had entrusted with reading his will. Walter texted me early one morning, his voice over the phone dry but laced with tension. They just showed up at Wallace's office. They're pushing hard. You need to know this. I sat in the small room, the phone screen casting light on my face. I wasn't surprised. My parents, Gregory and Patricia, always knew how to wield their authority. Jason, with his youthful impatience, was likely the one driving the charge. They thought I was gone, and now was their chance to seize the inheritance they craved. Through his hidden camera, Walter recounted how my father strode into Henry's office with an air of command, his black suit impeccable but his eyes brimming with calculation. "Jesse's as good as dead, Henry," he said coldly, as if stating an undeniable fact. "What are you waiting for? We have a right to know our share." My mother stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly, her voice soft but loaded with intent. "Henry, we just want clarity. Reginald wouldn't want his family kept waiting like this." Jason, as usual, couldn't hide his impatience, cutting in. "Grandfather left the estate for the whole family, not just Jesse. If he's gone, we need to settle this now." Henry Wallace, with his silver hair and piercing eyes, maintained an astonishing calm. He nodded but spoke with unshakable firmness. "I understand your concerns. Very well. I'll arrange a preliminary reading of Reginald's will. But you must understand, this is only a preliminary step. It won't be legally binding until Jesse's status is officially verified." He paused, looking directly into my father's eyes. "The law is the law. We must follow it." My father's fists clenched, his lips pressed into a tight line. My mother exchanged a quick glance with Jason, their eyes betraying impatience and greed. They nodded and left the office with an outward calm. But I knew they were seething inside. They wanted everything resolved quickly before any complications arose. But they didn't know the biggest complication was waiting for them, and I would be the one to deliver it. That night I met Henry Wallace in secret at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place no one would expect. He sat across from me, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him, his eyes a mix of surprise and concern. "Jesse, you're alive," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe his own eyes. "You had me worried sick." "I'm sorry," I said, my voice low. "But I had no choice. Someone wants me dead, and I think it's my family." I laid out everything from the cut brake line, Sam's warning, to the staged accident and Malone's evidence. Henry listened, his grip tightening on his coffee cup, his face growing more strained with each word. When I finished, he sighed. "Reginald always believed in you, Jesse. He said you were the only one in the family who understood the true value of a person. But it's horrific." "I know," I replied, my voice hoarse. "But I need you to do one last thing for me. I want to expose everything at the second will reading. I want them to see me, see the evidence, and have no way to deny it." Henry looked at me, his eyes wavering between worry and resolve. "All right, I'll arrange it. But you need to prepare yourself. This won't be easy, not just for them, but for you. The day arrived faster than I expected. The second will reading was held in an elegant conference room at Henry's office, with polished wooden walls and soft light streaming through large windows. My family, my parents, Jason, and a few other relatives sat around the long table, their eyes brimming with anticipation and tension. They thought I was gone, that this was the day they'd divide my grandfather's fortune. They were wrong. Henry stood, clearing his throat, his voice ringing clear. Before we begin, there's someone I believe you'll all want to meet. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. All eyes turned to the door as I walked in, my steps deliberate, my face cold as ice. My mother trembled, her voice breaking. "No, it can't be." My father froze, his face pale, his shaking hands gripping the table's edge for support. Jason, my brother, quaked, stammering, You were supposed to be dead." "How?" The other relatives whispered, their eyes wide with shock and fear. I sat across from them, silent, placing a folder and the USB drive on the table. Henry nodded, plugging the USB into the projector. The screen lit up, and the video of my meeting with Malone appeared. The tattooed man's voice rang out cold and clear. "Your brother, Jason Stone. He paid me $2,000 up front. The job was to cut your brakes." Next came the audio from Le Papillon, my father's voice. "If Jesse doesn't make it, the inheritance will go to us." And my mother's, "We need to act fast, before the lawyers put up barriers." The room felt like it had frozen over. My mother buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking, but I no longer believed her tears were real. My father sat rigid, his eyes frantic but still searching for an excuse. Jason, pale as a ghost, muttered, "No, that's not how it was. You misunderstood." But his voice was weak, hollow, as if he knew there was no escape. The other relatives sat in silence, their eyes darting between shock and fear, as if they'd just witnessed an entire world collapse. Before anyone could say another word, the conference room door swung open again. 2 police officers stepped in, their uniforms crisp, their eyes as hard as steel. One held up a summons, his voice ringing out coldly. "Gregory Stone, Patricia Stone, Jason Stone. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and related charges. Please come with us." No unnecessary words, no hesitation. My father shot to his feet, stammering in an attempt to protest, but the officer's piercing gaze silenced him. My mother clung tightly to my father's arm, her eyes now betraying raw panic. Jason, my brother, stood rooted to the spot, his face pale as a ghost, as if his legs were nailed to the floor. I stood there, watching them being led away, my heart heavy but without a trace of regret. They had chosen this path, chosen to betray me, to betray the values my grandfather had instilled in us. Henry Wallace, the family lawyer, placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low. "You did the right thing, Jesse. Reginald would be proud of you." But I didn't feel pride. I felt hollow, as if a part of my soul had been torn apart by my own family. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, San Jose's headlines screamed, "Stone family implicated in murder conspiracy to seize fortune." My parents' names, Jason's, and the entire Stone legacy were dragged through the mud. Those who once revered my grandfather now whispered behind their hands, their eyes filled with contempt. The reputation my grandfather had built over a lifetime became a laughingstock in a single day. I read the headlines on my phone, my heart aching like it was being sliced open, but I knew this was the price they had to pay. The police expanded their investigation immediately, and what they uncovered sent chills down my spine. Cash transactions between Jason and the tattooed Vince Malone were traced through secret bank accounts. Anonymous calls from burner phones led directly to Jason, with others tied to my parents. The evidence Walter had gathered, from the audio at Le Papillon to the video of Malone's confession, became undeniable bullets. Each piece pointed to a single truth. My family had planned to kill me to claim the inheritance. The legal consequences came swiftly and without mercy. Jason, as the mastermind, faced charges of conspiracy to commit murder, with a potential sentence of decades in prison. My parents were held accountable as accomplices, not only for aiding and abetting, but also for their cold discussions about adjusting the inheritance after my death. Under the law, their crimes against another heir disqualified them from receiving my grandfather's estate. Vince Malone, the bald thug, was hunted down after fleeing the bar. He was caught within days and in court confirmed his testimony in hopes of leniency. I sat in the discreet motel room reading Walter's report, my heart heavy. Justice was being served, but it brought no joy. I thought of the old days when my parents held me close, when Jason chased after me in our grandfather's yard. Now those memories were shattered like a dream torn to pieces. But amid the storm, I knew I still had a place to return to, a place that remained whole. The day I returned to Olivia and Grace, a light fog blanketed San Jose. I stepped into the house, my heart pounding as if it were the first time I kissed Olivia. She was in the kitchen, her back to me, but when she heard the door open, she spun around, her eyes wide. "Jesse?" Her voice trembled as if she couldn't believe it. Grace, playing with her toys on the floor, looked up. "Daddy!" She launched herself into my arms, hugging me tightly as if afraid I'd vanish. I knelt down, enveloping them both, tears spilling despite my efforts to hold them back. "I'm back," I whispered, my voice choking. "And this time no one will ever tear us apart again." Olivia hugged me, her tears soaking my shoulder, but this time they were tears of joy. I told them everything, the cut-break line, the staged plot, my family's betrayal. Olivia listened, her hand gripping mine tightly, her eyes a mix of sorrow and resolve. "You did the right thing," she said. "For us. For Grace." I held them closer, feeling like the entire world had shrunk to this small kitchen, where our love remained untouched. Outside, San Jose kept moving, but in my heart, for the first time in days, I felt peace. Justice had come, albeit late, and I knew from now on I would live for those who truly loved me. A few days later, Henry, the lawyer, summoned the remaining family members to his office for the official reading of Reginald Stone's will. My parents and Jason had been taken away, facing undeniable charges, and now the elegant conference room held only me, Olivia, Grace, and a few distant relatives, those uninvolved in the horrific plot. The air was thick with silence as Henry stood holding a thick stack of papers, his eyes somber but resolute. The room was deathly quiet as Henry began reading the terms. His voice rang clear, each word striking my mind like a hammer. I sat there, gripping Olivia's hand tightly, her warmth anchoring me amidst the storm of emotions. Grace sat beside us, her wide eyes glancing around, too innocent to fully grasp what was happening. I stroked her hair, forcing a smile, but inside I was bracing for a truth I'd never dared to imagine. Then Henry reached the critical part, the division of my grandfather's estate. That's when I was hit with a shock that made my heart skip a beat. My grandfather's will didn't favor me as Jason and my parents had feared. He had divided the estate almost equally among his children and grandchildren. My parents, Gregory and Patricia, were to receive substantial portions, even more than my share. Jason, too, had a portion that would have ensured a comfortable life. I, Jesse Stone, had my share, but it wasn't the entirety they dreaded. My grandfather wanted us all to benefit, to unite and build a future rooted in family and trust. I sat there, stunned, clutching the copy of the will Henry handed me. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. The true value of a family lies not in wealth, but in how we treat one another. I looked at Olivia, her gentle eyes filled with empathy, as if she understood the pain consuming me. If my parents and Jason hadn't been blinded by greed, if they'd accepted the shared legacy my grandfather intended, they could have lived in comfort and happiness. But their mistrust, their thirst for money had cost them everything. Not just the wealth, but our family, their freedom, and their honor. The bitter irony weighed heavily on my shoulders. They had plotted to kill me out of fear that I'd take the lion's share, but in the end they'd stripped themselves of everything. By law, their crimes disqualified them from inheriting. I, who never cared for the money, who only wanted to protect my small family, became my grandfather's sole heir. But this victory brought no joy. It left only a painful void where memories of the family I once loved used to be. I stood and left the conference room, the will still clutched in my hand. Olivia walked beside me, her hand gently resting on my back, while Grace held my other hand, chattering about a dog she'd seen on the way. I smiled at her, but inside I was speaking to my grandfather. If they'd understood this sooner, things could have been different, I thought, my inner voice choking. My grandfather had tried to leave us not just wealth, but a lesson in family and unity. But my parents and Jason had chosen a different path. I paused at the office door, looking out at the San Jose sky, where sunlight pierced through the clouds. I thought of the old days when my grandfather sat in his armchair, sharing timeless values with me. And I realized his true legacy wasn't the money, the buildings, or the land. It was the lesson I'd carry forever. Greed can make you lose everything, even those you love most. Justice may come late, but it never fails to arrive. And a true legacy isn't just material wealth. It's how we choose to live to preserve family values. I turned back, pulling Olivia and Grace into a tight embrace, their warmth reminding me that I still had a family, a real one. "Let's go," I said, my voice soft but certain. "Let's go home." And as we walked away, I knew that no matter how painful the past was, I would live for those I loved and for the values my grandfather had left behind.